I'm Sean Arnold from Brave in the Attempt, sharing a previously recorded webinar. We're going to explore HyperDocs and the rationale behind them and some of the ways that you can use them. So welcome everybody to HyperDocs Hocus Pocus. Again, you can go ahead and join that Pear Deck, and you can go ahead and find the agenda. Both of them are linked in the chat. Forge ahead. A few expectations right off the bat. Just try to keep your mics muted if you can. In this next part, the most important thing I will probably show all day is this bit.ly link. It is the one that I shared in the chat that you have access to there as well. But here it is. It's just bit.ly hyper HP and also some contact info for me if you need it. All the rest of this is just baduliciousness to say that I've tried a lot of different things. I'm going to try to provide a lot of materials for you today. I am going to go through some basic doc stuff, but I want to give an explanation and background behind the concept of HyperDocs if you're not familiar with it. It isn't just, hey, look, a document with hyperlinks as I first perceived it to be. It's much more than that. And beyond that, I want to give you a lot of resources to take your learning to the next level. Okay? So use my failures over time as your launching pad to not have to go through the same ones. Okay? And let me just start you off with this quote about true interactivity. It's not about clicking on icons or downloading files. It's about encouraging communication in whatever form or method we have for our students. Yes, communication doesn't always have to happen with our words in our mouth. In fact, there's a lot of students in District 75 that it cannot happen that way, but that does not mean they don't communicate with us. It doesn't mean that there's not a lot of stuff that they're not telling us. And I just think it's important. You can go ahead and let me know how you've tried to interact with your students in there in the Pear Deck. All right. Next one, where you at? Have you ever made a HyperDoc? Have you ever made a document, Google Doc, period? Good. Real quickly, know that Google Docs consists of a whole lot of things within the Google Drive world. Yes, HyperDocs makes you think of docs, but actually we'll get into how HyperDocs actually can be a whole bunch of these different things in a lot of different ways. So just note that they all integrate and work together. I've done other sessions on slides and forms and things, and we'll do some more on Jamboard as well. But all of these are integrated and can work together. So let's get into what a HyperDoc is attempting to do. It's attempting to integrate technology effectively, enabling that student voice, that communication piece that I was talking about, make their thinking and make your thought process visible for everybody, and then collaborative, sharing our work together. All right? Makes sense. These are all things we want to do, regardless of the levels of our students. Here's the pedagogy behind HyperDocs. Yes, part of it is a formative assessment piece. We want to know where our students are at. Part of that is them demonstrating their mastery of content. Some of it is differentiation and individualization and personalization for students as they can go through it. And some of it is just them curating their resources for themselves and making it themselves aware of all that they have available. So here is why HyperDocs I think are cool. You can do so many things with it. I think you guys can look through these. But some of my favorite ones are, it's not just about inserting a lot of media, though that's available for it. This is a big one for me. Students can work at their own pace. This can be done very much asynchronously, which is awesome for this time and space. And this other one, that it gives students choice and voice. But it's also really engaging. So those students who might be less inclined to hop on an activity might be incentivized more to do so and do it independently. All right? So on that note, what is a HyperDoc? Well, don't get confused. It is not just a document with hyperlinks in it. Yes, that is a piece of the technical side, but that's not what HyperDocs are about. It's not meant to just be a substitution or some digital worksheet. It's meant to be all those things I was saying, a tool to allow for that creativity, that collaboration, that communication. It should be interactive. It should be students demonstrating learning. It shouldn't just be some static sitting there thing, all right? Here is the 7-step process, though there are lots of ways to put together a HyperDoc and different forms it can take, and I'll show you several examples later on. But these are the 7 steps generally that you take students through. You might be familiar with the 5E model for learning. This just adds a couple to that. So yeah, we want to engage those students first, get them hooked, maybe a video, maybe an interactive website, audio recording. Then we give them time to explore a lot of resources. That can take many forms. And to be fair, a lot of this doesn't have to be done digitally, okay? This exploration can be analog. Then we get into an explanation. This could be your direct instruction piece if you need it, or if you're doing it more flipped or blended learning, it could be done through a screen recording or a video you put in there. Then it's time for students to apply, show what they know, right? Demonstrate their understanding, instructions for the main assignment probably of the piece. And then sharing is important. This is that feedback piece after it. It isn't just them doing the work, it's sharing it with a genuine audience. Maybe that's another student, maybe that's another class, maybe that's people around the world. There are opportunities for that now too. But then they need to reflect on their own afterwards and go back, either as a class or those think, pair, shares that you do. There's digital ways to do it as well after they've gotten that feedback from their work. And then there's more extensions and other places you can take it. All right, that might seem a lot, that might seem overwhelming. And let me be clear, HyperDocs for every lesson are not a thing that you obviously need to do. And even more so, I'm going to be sharing a whole bunch of stuff with you that's going to make it easier. All right, and so the best parts of technology are when you have to do far less work and a lot of the work's already done for you. I've taken care of doing a lot of that, so that's out there. That'll be there for you. All right, cool. Here I am linking you to a actual HyperDoc on HyperDocs, a little meta there, but it does show you how you can get into these different engage pieces. Might take you to some videos. Maybe your explanations might happen in a Padlet or some online sharing space. Maybe when students are reflecting, they're sharing inside a Google slide deck, right? Lots of ways to do it. These show you some digital ways you can be doing it with students now, but the opportunities are endless, only for your creativity. And also, what tools are we using? Yes, I'm going to be living here deeply in Docs today, but I'm going to show you a few other examples. Excuse me. So a HyperDoc can be in Google Slides. I'm not going to cover those a bunch because we have a whole different session on slide sorcery that covers that. Inserting Google Drawings, I will cover that a little bit, into your Docs is great. Consolidating it on a Google site, awesome too. And then there are these other pieces that you tie in, whether it's videos or screen recordings or places for conversation that get tied into where all of your materials are consolidated in an engaging way. All right, so let's just go through some basics. I know most of you said you were on the advanced end, so I'm going to bust through these, but I just want to give you the opportunity to put some question marks in if there are places where you have it. Starting, we can create a doc, docs.google.com, or clicking up on that little waffle, create new. Of course, you can do it straight from Google Classroom as well. If you create a new assignment and then just click that new button like that here in Classroom, you'll be able to do it. And you can do it straight from Google Drive. All right. So boom, in Drive, make me do doc. Here's a really nice piece you might be less familiar with. You can convert old docs from Microsoft Word or PDFs into immediately an editable Google Doc. Now, I will say if it isn't a PDF that has a lot of images in it, the images likely won't be converted. There's a better way to do that using Google Drawings. I'll dive into that a little later. But those are options that are available to you. All right? When you're working with the file, when you're done, you can download it in a ton of formats. If you're not familiar, one of the cool ones here is an EPUB, and that's basically an ebook, if you're not familiar, that you could read on an iPad or a Kindle or somewhere else. An interactive sort of book. Page setup is important too. You can actually change the color and backgrounds of your documents if you weren't familiar with it. So if you want, it on a blue paper, you can do that. And all the orientation and things you'll notice about. You guys get printing. Language, though, you can actually, in that file zone area, this is different than translation. You can set the language for your document. So that way, when it's doing grammar and spell check and everything, it's going to do it in accordance with that language. So that's a big piece if you're doing a lot of stuff with English language learners or multilingual learners. All right, a few more basic helpful tools, and feel free to drag those question marks where you might need it. I think a lot of these basics are clear to you. We love the magic of the undo, redo button. I'll get more into comments when we talk about collaboration. Formatting, cool. I think you get, this one is going to be big, and I will cover it, styles and headers, because that's an important piece for accessibility, and I am going to get a bit into accessibility and how to make sure your documents are nice and accessible for your users. And this outline piece is also very helpful. Part of making that most effective is using styles and headers, and I'll show you that in a little bit later too, so I'm definitely going to make time for those. I think you guys get fonts. Copy format is a really nice button though. I have showed it in other workshops, but basically if I've made one part of my document the way I wanted and looks with all the pretty fonts, I don't have to go and click on everything else to make that happen. I can go ahead and just copy and paste that format where I need it to be. All right? And again, I will share the agenda and other stuff out again in a bit, but it was in the chat if somebody else wants to post that in there. Finally, hyperlinks. Yes, we'll get a lot into hyperlinks and how to insert and create things. And mode is an important feature too. If you're less familiar with mode, there's several modes. I am going to demonstrate that because I think that is one that's really worth sharing that a lot of people may be less familiar with. All right. So on that note, when you're editing stuff, yeah, we get undo, redo, copy, paste, paint formatting. That actually works with your images and photos and things as well. And I'm going to show you some select, find, and replace. There's an explore button for that. But this is all within the realm of our editing prowess within a Google Doc. All right? So let me just demo a few basics for you. I'm going to drag over a document I've been working on. And here is another document that I'll show off for this too. This is that HyperDoc on HyperDocs. All right? Yay, lovely, lovely, lovely. Shows you that 5 E's. But here's one we were working on about the Civil War, part 2. It's all heating up. Here's all those basic editing features. I think most of you said you were fine with that. Great. I am going to show you this paint format though. So this, I like the way this stuff looks. Maybe I want to copy that paint format there and then head on down to somewhere else. Maybe this review time. And oops, I forgot to. Boom. Paint that. And now we go down. And review time. There you go. See, I can paste those formats in there. I don't have to redo everything, making it look pretty. That's not bad. So that's a nice button. I think you guys get grammar and spell check. I'm going to get into all the different things you can insert in a little bit because there's some that are pretty cool. But here's where it gets a little more interesting into that mode section. Editing, suggesting, viewing. Okay. So let me scroll through. Oh, here's some suggestions Greg made for me. Yeah. All right. Not bad. Not bad. Ooh. All right. There's one from Amanda telling me how I need to adjust this. These are comments that are added to the side. I'll get a little more into this a bit later, but all you got to do is select an area, add a comment. If I want to get somebody's attention, add Greg. There he is. Is poor the right word? And he'll get a message about that. Okay, that's interesting enough. What else can we do in here that's worthwhile? Well, I want to show you that that mode feature and how that changes the look. I'm going to scroll to a part that was getting a little more edited up here. Oops. No, it was right here. And actually, I think Greg resolved those areas. Okay, so maybe I'll have to edit it again. Right now, if I start editing, it just types it in because I'm in edit mode. But I can either go to view or I can hit this up here. I can go to suggestion mode. So maybe in this section, I can go ahead and write, then good stuff. Now, it's not actually deleting that until I click this resolve. It's just a suggestion for whoever else may be looking at it. It also gives me the option of just being a viewer if I'm just ready for it to be printed up later on. But other than that, this is the layout that we get. I'm going to get more into how you can do all the add-ons and other fancy stuff in a little bit. But that's more or less the basics of editing, which I think most of you understand. And if there's other basics that we need, I'll get to them a little bit more in a moment. All right, let's get a little creative with it. Yes, there are tons of built-in templates that are really lovely. You can change all those formatting. You can do columns, font, spacing, colors, bullet points, headers, and footers. The way you can access headers and footers, you can either go to Insert, Header and Footer, or You can really just double click up at the top of your document here, and let me actually get out of suggesting mode and go into editing mode. And maybe I want every page to say Sean is awesome sauce. Boom. And so now on every page, that's my header. Maybe at the bottom in the footer, I want to insert page numbers. All right, let's do it more like this and then I'm also going to insert a page count. So now I know how many pages this is. It's 1 out of 11. All right, nice way to get those headers and footers in there. Beyond that, you guys get how to make pretty colors and adjust those fonts and stuff. I don't think that requires as much of you, so I don't see any question marks there, so I'm going to forge ahead. Inserting content. Now this is big. I am going to spend a little bit of time on that. There's a difference between tables and charts. Charts are those graphs and pie charts and sorts of like that. Tables are actually amazingly useful in HyperDocs. And this you will note, these are all tables. This here, this is the table with each of these different elements of the table, you'll see, and some of them merge together. So if I want to go ahead and insert a table to go ahead and organize all my thoughts inside of this HyperDoc. Oops, well, that's fine, I'll do it there. Insert my table. How big? Let's go like that. All right, and I can make these all pretty colors and backgrounds, but maybe for certain portions like all of these, I want to merge those cells. And maybe for these, I want to merge those because of the way I'm going to do my layout. That's the look I needed to have. I can also, in case you were unaware, insert full-on pictures into cells of a cell. Even beyond that, and now we're going to get really meta, insert another table inside of a table. What? Yeah, I'm blowing my mind. All right. So yeah, you can get really deep with all of that. You can put in the info without tables, obviously, in a HyperDoc. I'm going to show you other ways that involve slides and things. But for keeping everything in the layout and format that you like and leaving those spaces empty for student info like this, a table is a nice way to leave it there rather than just a bunch of blank space underneath. All right. Also, if you do tables this way, without a bunch of returns, it's way better than a bunch of extra space because that extra space becomes less accessible for screen readers. Now, for images, when we're inserting them, there's a couple things we can do with it. I can go ahead, insert my image. Let's go ahead and do it straight from the web. All right, let's look for Civil War pictures because that's the topic of this one. All right, that's nice. Now I can click on Insert. Oh, well, for some reason it didn't like that picture. Let's try again. Let's pick a different one then. Maybe it's just because I have 1,700 windows open right now too. Yeah, okay. We don't like my windows. Let's just go to the Explore button that I was going to show you later and get this one. Yep. All right, we're going to insert that one. There we go. Now that I've got this, I can edit it after the fact, moved it, shift it around. I'm not going to go tons into this, but I can crop it, resize. So if I don't want all that stuff at the top, and I just want these guys down here, there you go. I can adjust in a lot of other ways. I can go to my image options and totally recolor it so it matches kind of my document. Maybe something sort of like that. So you do have a lot of options to change the formatting in images and the pictures in your site. I'm not going to show you this yet, but there is a way also here when we're on it to add the alt text. I'll get to there when I show you some accessibility features within your documents. Now there's one other cool feature here that I want to show you that actually can be used to make a lot of fun stories, especially with picture symbols for students, with emojis or math. How do I get to those? Well, I'll insert, and you'll see there's equations, and that's how I can go ahead and create a bunch of mathematical equations. But special characters are how I can go ahead and insert symbols. Oh, let's go to emojis because I like those. All right. Yeah, this is the bomb. And that's how you can get into a bunch of those. Of course, emojis work like text, so if I want to resize those, I can very easily. So those are some of the cool things that you can insert to make your documents more interesting and creative. I'm going to go ahead and get to the next step of creation, which is those image adjustments that I showed you. Cropping is one of them. Alignment is another. What's in front, what's in back. A lot of times in document, it's about how it displaces the text. So it can be text on top and bottom. I think you guys are fairly familiar with that. Now, I will say in a Google document, you don't have the ability to draw lots of shapes. Mostly it's just lines. But if you do want to draw other shapes, I'm going to take you into Google Drawings in just a moment and show you how you can add fun things like that. And then there's all the hyperlinks. This is important, obviously, for a HyperDoc. How do we make those? Well, click on some text, right-click, there's link, or insert link. As always, there's 10 ways to do something in a Google document. But here's what's nice. When I click link, yes, there are websites that are suggesting the dictionary definition of congrats, but I can also go to sections in my document itself, or I can link to whole other documents that I have in my drive. For some reason, it's linking to Janet's baby shower, probably because it says congrats. So that's interesting. Now, it was about to link to that drawing, which is the perfect change for me to go ahead and insert a drawing. Now, if you want to do a brand new Google drawing, you can. I'm just going to get one for my drive and show you what it looks like. Let me get down to the bottom of this document, and this is one that I inserted before. And this is what I was talking about good ways to put in a worksheet instead. If it's got a lot of images, you just throw it inside a Google drawing. So if I was doing one from scratch, I could go ahead and just insert my PDF as a JPEG on here. I could draw all sorts of shapes. So if you want to get shapes in your document, yes, you can do that all here. I can go ahead and add more images directly from the web or take a snapshot myself. Uh-oh, I got to get out of there. I got to unlock that on the other browser and do it. Or, like I said, from search. So, Civil War. See, which ones did it like? Well, it likes it now. I can write text on there as well and make this as advanced and lovely as I need. Let's just go ahead and say that's not a very pretty picture, but what is a little bit better are examples like this that I can suddenly insert in my document. This is just in a Google drawing. This shows 21st century learning, all with shapes and text, or that worksheet that was created in there for students where they're able to go ahead and fill in their information and name. It makes it very easy for students because they can just go right in there and type in there, type right on these boxes. And instead of having to print it out and write it out and do all these other things, if you have these worksheets or you want to make them in here, very easy to insert that Google drawing. So that's sort of the magical world that you can have by having drawings collaborate with it. And then you can create all sorts of things where students are letting you know how they feel. They're doing some science informational piece on photosynthesis or telling the story of Charlotte's Web through emojis. All right. Let's go ahead and get past those hyperlinks. And I showed you how we could do drawings, again, PDFs and images. I do want to show you, though, this Explore button. All right. So let's demo that. The Explore button, as you started to see when I clicked on it earlier, is this little thing down at the bottom that hides in the bottom right. If I click on that, you'll see it automatically knows what's in my document, stuff about the American Civil War that I can continue to search on. It finds images automatically related. If I can search in the web in there all about it and add this as research to it with the appropriate citations in my footnotes. So this is way easier than I ever had to do it as a student when I was becoming a teacher, finding all those footnotes and typing it in independently. So annoying. But there it is. It does the work for you. One other awesome piece that's here that I'm going to show you that's important for the accessibility and everything else I'm doing. If you noted, I have certain pretty pieces at the top. This is paragraph styles. Now, that's not how it starts. What I did is I updated it to match that paragraph style. So if anything else I want to be a title, I can simply click on that. And now if I make that the title, it'll apply that setting to it. Similarly, I did the same for these and set these as headers, series down, continuing, and all the rest. I even changed my normal text to be this. So that way, automatically in my document, it'll change it all the way I need it to be. And the other way that that helps is, here's my document outline. Oh, if I want to jump to different areas in it, very easy to get through. Now, yes, I'm setting it up so I have hyperlinks embedded and it takes me there, but that is how I can jump to it. Let's get to working together. Collaborating is the best part of Google Documents. So there's comments and replies. I showed you a little bit about what that is. There's the share button. Print and stuff I think you get, but you can email it as an attachment directly from the file. And then you can publish it to the web, which I'm going to show you in a moment. And beyond that, there's those different modes I showed you. You can be in editing mode. You can simply add suggestions for whoever's document you're working with, or view it. And then revision history that I'm going to spend a little bit of time on, because this is a magical thing. Your work is never lost. It's there. You can always get it back. And amazingly, if somebody else messes something up, you can figure out who did it. All right, so let's go back in. I'm in this document. I'm going to close that explore thing over at the right. I'm going to zoom in a little bit so you can see this a bit better. And you'll see up here on file, I've got all those things about publishing to the web. When I'm ready, I can make that a link and publish it out. And that makes it a finalized document, not even one like this that people can only view, but it's just a visual version. Let me go ahead and publish that. I get this link. And if I open it up in another tab, oops, that is not the right link. Now it's the link. I copied the whole document. Here we go. And this is all the person sees is the document itself. They don't get to edit. They don't have any of those other things that they get to view. That's all. All right. So that's publishing to the web. Let's look at sharing. Now, I can just enter people's email address, share with them. They can edit with me. And the reason I'll know they'll be editing is because it's got this on the side. Do I just want them to be able to comment? Do I just want them to be able to view it? This is an important button you will probably have to go to if you're sharing it broadly, the Get Shareable Link button. Because this, right now, this document is only viewable to people in the District 75 domain. If I want people in the broader DOE to be able to see it, I'll click on that. Save it. Now they can, and then I can copy and paste that link for some other people to edit. So that's how we can share it out, and we can collaborate on this document in the way that Amanda and Greg and I have. All right. Here's an issue. Control-Shift-4, not sure of the final button on the screen. You know what? I think that's okay. I can click Resolve, or I can link to this somewhere else if I need to send her more information about it. I can even go ahead and reply. Do I really need to change it? We'll have that little message back and forth on the side. It's not actually editing the document itself. It's just letting us know as we're working together. We don't have to get out and necessarily go to text messages, open up email. We can comment directly while we're working together, or when she goes back into the document, she'll be able to see those edits. All right, that's pretty nice. But what about all the edits and comments that have been happening and I've resolved them? What if somebody messed something up? I could go up here to File and go to where it says, version history. Do I want to name my different versions? Hey, this is today, the final one. No, let's just see it for now and see what people have been messing with. Okay, so we got several of us messing on it today. Now you see we're each a little color-coded. Let me scroll down to somebody else's. Let's see what Amanda was messing with. And I'll go ahead and see the parts that are highlighted orange as we get to it. Actually, let me go to Greg's because I know what Greg was working on. All right. And let's go. Okay. So I see certain areas there highlighted. Let's go ahead to this edit down here. The two of us together. And see our different colors. Oh, here we go. Purple is Greg. There's me. All right, a suggestion I made. If I want, I can name that version to be like, oh, check this back. Or if I'm like, yeah, this is when everything was right, I can completely restore that version and go back to it. So that's a really nice way for you to make sure nothing ever got messed up again. Of course, since it is Google Docs automatically integrates with Classroom completely, and they're built in. And as I was showing you before, the why and what of HyperDocs and the rationale behind them and how it is for engaging and differentiating and compelling instruction and making it more interactive for students. All right. So essentially, when they've completed it, yes, this sort of a document, they're done. And a student, I would give a whole lot of time on something like this. This is essentially a whole unit. So this might be over the course of a few weeks. I have several that I'll be sharing with you that are weekly plans and even multi-week plans for remote learning as templates. All right, so that's a bit of the collaboration piece. Now let's just make sure it's accessible so that all my students can access it. There's a lot of ways to do that inside of a Google Doc. Yes, there's spelling and grammar check. I know you're familiar with that. There's translation, which you may not know exists immediately there in the document. Paragraph styles I showed you. I showed you those emojis and symbols. Alt text on your photos, which I'll spend a moment showing you. The accessibility settings and the checker. Now, I will say that the accessibility checker isn't built in the way it is in Microsoft Word. Here you need an add-on called Grackle. And then there's the voice typing. So let's start with alt text on this particular image. I'm just going to right click, choose some alt text. All right. Well, let's give it a different Captain America Civil War, Captain America versus Iron Man in a battle. That's a better description, and I can give it a title if I want. But that's not what the screen reader is going to read. Okay, so now I have my alt text in there. Pretty good. What about my voice typing? Okay, so let's go to here. I'm going to go up to Tools, and you'll see this is where I find a lot of those, like Translate, Document, Voice Typing, etc. Let's click on that. Wow, I wonder who's going to win. I bet it's going to be Captain America, because he's awesome. Pretty accurate. I don't know if you saw that. I'll get that in the middle of the screen. But let's go ahead and go back up to Tools and translate my document. Choose a language, one that I might understand. Where is Portuguese? There we go. Translate. And now it's creating a whole new document for me with those translations embedded in there. And while that's working, I want to remind you about all of those paragraph styles we use, because that's what lets visually impaired people easily skip through their text and see what's available there. All right. Let's also go up to my accessibility settings while that's loading. Here's what accessibility settings are for. Do I want to turn on the screen reader support, Braille, screen magnifier? My eyesight isn't quite what it was. Now, granted, another tool just for that is this zoom button, so we can maximally zoom into that doc if necessary. All right, and there comes, oh, there it is, my translated document. Again, is it a perfect translation? No, only a human being is going to do that. It is more of a word-for-word translation. But, you know, if that's all you got for now to translate for your parents and others who might need it, it's better than only giving them the English translation by far. All right, so I'm going to head out of that. That's some of the main accessibility things. Now, this next portion is when we get into the sorcery. And I will say, I'm going to go relatively quickly through this. Don't worry about that, because this time is not about me demonstrating how all these pieces work, because how it works is basically those same basic tools that I showed you. Using hyperlinks, using images, using shapes, using drawings, right? Using the linking to things within the text and things outside of it. Those are the basic tools that I'm using to make all of this sorcery work. And I'm going to be showing you examples as I go. I'll pull them up on the screen that I'm sharing. But if you're in the Pear Deck, it'll automatically link you. So first up is the style of Pear Deck that is a playlist or demo. So here is one example of that. Right? This is just a playlist. how students are going to go through their lesson plan. I just do this first, do this second, do this third. All right. And it links to the various activities. Pretty straightforward, not too complicated. All right. Doesn't require much. Of course, this one is using tables, like I said. It doesn't have to, but I like the tables in this simply because it makes the spaces where students are supposed to enter information relatively clear. And they can mark off when they completed each here. Yes, I will only get the final submitted document, but I do like to know, what was their pace. Maybe certain parts are too hard, and I should have gone a little slower. All right, next up is special events. Okay, so you should be seeing this one. There's lots of special events. I have ones for the holidays, but it being Autism Awareness Month, this is in celebration of that, and it gives a whole bunch of this style is more of a game board where it allows students to go ahead and explore various parts related to it. Yes, they can read, they can analyze certain documents, they can go ahead and figure out who they're talking to. They can get a transcript of this podcast that they can listen to. So there's a lot of multimedia exploration of the topic of autism spectrum disorder. Okay, so that's how we can celebrate fun special events through a HyperDoc. Let's go on to some self-paced learning. Now, this is one of the powerful ways and one of the things we really should focus on in the use of HyperDocs, especially now with remote learning and especially if we're integrating with Google Classroom. This is done in a Google slide. And as I said, HyperDocs are not only in docs. This could have been done in a doc. But because I wanted it nice and visual like this, here it is in a slide deck. So this is summer reading. This was not actually one that I had created. This was actually shared with me, but it shows the summer reading program for a school in Minnesota and what they expected and the different ways that students could demonstrate their understanding of what they had read. Like I said, students can work at their own pace. It's the summer. There aren't dates. There aren't expectations. But we still want the learning to keep going the same way we're doing now. And this gives them that freedom to explore and create and demonstrate their understanding in whatever works best for them. And linked inside of these are lots of other templates and storyboards that show students exactly how to do it themselves. All right. Next up on the agenda, beyond self-paced learning, is a choice board. Now, especially in District 75, choice boards are huge. Here's a fairly simple one for a kindergarten class. Not too complicated. This one is also in Google Slides. But it just is adding some images, some shapes, and those links. So students can watch that 100 video. If, clicking these links is difficult, this is a printable one that I had sent out that has the QR codes that can be scanned with student iPads. But it is just go ahead, picking stories. As you see, not all of these hyperlink to things. This is basically asking the student to act out their own fairy tale. So it doesn't require that every piece of it be digital. It's just different methods for the students to demonstrate it. It allows for that differentiation of product and differentiation of process. All right? So choice boards are a nice way to give options, especially in the midst of remote learning. Let's go to the 5E model. So this is one of the standard ways. This is how, especially in science, I have focused lessons. We go through the 5 E's. If you're not familiar, it's sort of those same ones that I showed with the 7 model, and it's the ones built into my basic HyperDoc here that you'll see. Engage, explore, explain, and now I'm trying to remember the last E. It's blanking on me. If somebody knows it, type it in the chat. But this goes through those 5s on a simple animal habitats. They get to explore first. They get to show what they know. And then they pick their animal and they tell me some things that they've discovered and some questions they still have, some facts, some details about it. Just exploring animals right now. I'll get to some other fun ways that they can explore animals in a little bit with virtual field trips. But that's the 5E model. Another model is the agenda model, which looks like one of, actually, that was another example of a choice board. Here's a higher order choice board where students aren't just choosing different things on one topic, but all their math topics in an individual choice board. Or here again is that 5E model on Eric Carle books, right? exploring, explaining, going into a Flipgrid and applying their learning. But here is that agenda. Basically a web page where the students can go ahead and let me know, orderly fashion, what their learning is, what they're researching. They're making an Adobe Spark to demonstrate it for me. They're turning it in. I've linked to where the assignment goes, where they can reflect. Another way you can do that sort of agenda, it can be almost like a board game, and they work through the agenda. Here it is. This is 1 week, as I told you, of online learning and ways students can do. Maybe you decide that this is too complex and this is 2 weeks. That's on you. It's up to you. But this is one created, and how they can go ahead and just push this into, once they've completed all the portions, straight into Google Classroom, and all of them will be linked here by and for the student. Now, I will say, as I'll explain later, one of the important things to do with students is to walk them through a HyperDoc process of how they go through it, what the steps are, which is why I like the ones I showed you first, or some of those basic agenda ones or playlist versions first. But once you've acclimated them to it, they can get into these more expansive ones. So they can go ahead and choose Google Voyages in their choice docs and have more options available to them. All right, let's go to an actual standard HyperDoc model, though. And here is an example of that HyperDoc model for Greek mythology. We're going through our 7 tasks, right? How am I engaging them? Well, look, like I said, again, some of them are not digital tasks. I actually want students to sit at home and read. We want them to explain about their understanding of Greek mythology. And this is where they go ahead and apply their learning. And there's several options for them. Digital projects. Let's go back. Non-digital projects, right? Making a Greek goddess Barbie advertisement is a fun one. Making some comic strips, etc. As well as the digital projects. Here's a link where they could create their wanted poster in this template here, or the comic strip and another template right there. So it's all about giving students options for that learning and giving them opportunities to demonstrate in what manner works best for them. All right, next up, multimedia text sets. All right, what a multimedia text set is simply a way to explore an idea. So this is heavy on the explore zone of the 5 E's. Exploring a topic through multimedia texts, as it were, and those texts can be videos, they can be audio, they can be podcasts, they can be all sorts of things, images. Here's some of those text sets that I have linked for students, things like a thing link. If you're not familiar with thing link, it's sort of like an augmented reality space where you can layer things on top of an image. Here's some blend space where they get to go ahead and put and mix videos together, as well as simple YouTube videos. And then they just let me know what's their understanding following it. Similarly to multimedia text sets, which is the multimedia sources you're pushing out for students, are multimedia share-outs. So in a multimedia share-out, let's get this one. Oops, that's more of an interactive. Where's my multimedia share-out? Well, as I search through my 17,000 other tabs, multimedia share-out is simply, you're seeing it on your screen, and I have it linked there as a book bento, basically where students are sharing their own understanding in the HyperDoc. So that one, in that HyperDoc, you're seeing that students are basically recreating bento boxes for their books that they were reading to demonstrate their understanding. What are the most important parts of this story? What objects do I have around me in my home, where I'm at? They can show I understood what this story was about, what the tensions were, what the conflict was, and I'm just going to take a picture of that to demonstrate my understanding. It doesn't require a ton of work on the students' part, apart from searching their house for items and understanding the actual content of the story. All right? This next one up, interactives. I dug deeply into all the ways this can happen in a Google Slide Sorcery, but this gives students, as they're studying the 5 senses, they're engaging, watching the video, they're listening to their story, they're applying it by, what are the 5 senses? Now, again, I know we teach students 5 senses. Technically, you have a whole lot more than 5 senses, like sense of balance. But for the simplicity of this kindergarten class, we're not going to dive that deeply into it. So are my feet a sense? Well, maybe if I consider my feet a version of the sense of touch, right? So that's an interactive HyperDoc. Let's do a newsletter. This isn't my newsletter. This one is created by a teacher friend in California. But as you can see, I make my newsletters. If you get the District 75 newsletters, I usually do it in Pages and push it out as a PDF. But this is a fun way that it's very interactive as well. So in the sense that my newsletters are a HyperDoc in and of themselves, this too, inside of the Google Slides, is a HyperDoc as well. Now I've linked it like this, but when I would want to send it out and publish it, that's when you would go and publish it to the web, all right? And use that setting over there. But this is a very expansive one over the course of the last several weeks. This is every single one easily, so teachers can go back through and look at all the different newsletters over time with 4 quick shares. All right. So newsletters are a fun way if you're communicating with teachers, staff at your school. Let's head over to mindfulness. Now I'm sharing a particular one that's a mindfulness document, but I'm going to share this one just because I love Kid President. If you've never watched Kid President, he's awesome. But this is a different mindfulness one. It's about students exploring their hopes and dreams. Obviously, mindfulness is of key importance in this time, both for yourself and for your students. So why not take them through it and explore their feelings and their thoughts? Questions about like, how are your pets doing in the midst of this? Are they stressed? How are your parents and your family? What have you been eating? How's your sleep? All those types of things that are very crucial and important, but we can do it in a more fun, engaging way that doesn't seem like we're probing and being too intrusive for students who might not be as open with sharing in that capacity. All right. Next one up, beyond mindfulness, got a few more, is that game board that we were talking about. I did show a sort of an example of it before, but here's an example of a holiday game board, just exploring the holidays. And students can go around, and here's how the game works. Complete at least 6 game board boxes of your choice in any order, and they're just going to fill it up if they've finished it and link in their completed work, right? So on top of the gingerbread house, they will link theirs, and then they will submit their document in Classroom, and I will be able to see who finished the board first, who won the game, and all the other students who are playing are winning too, because they're learning the information that I want to share. All right, I had to do this one because these are my jams. Choose Your Own Adventures. This is a really complex Choose Your Own Adventure. I have several other ones, but it is just using those hyperlink features. Let's begin reading the story. I click begin. And when I would share this with students, if I just want them to read it, again, I'm going to publish it to the web. But go ahead, let's hit begin the story. It takes me to page 1. We go ahead and read. King Theseus. All right, continue the story. Why are we not taking me there? All right, let's go here. And again, continue. It just continues page 3. Now I get to my first choice. Go to the peddlers with supplies or continue on without supplies. Let's go ahead and go to that page. And actually, if it was published, it would be easier for me to get there. Boom. Continue on to page 5. And then I just go ahead and continue through my story. Now, this one is a particularly advanced story. If you'll note, it's like 91 pages of story. Normally, we don't get that expansive with it, but this is a fun little quest. Again, this only needs to be a few pages for student-created ones. It doesn't need to be that expansive. It's just a series of choices that get hyperlinked, that can either be hyperlinked to the page, or in the way that this is done, they can be hyperlinked to different sections. So if I went to link that, I can just link to different headings in my story. So if I want war to go to how war affects society, now that will take me there. All right. Next up is Genius Hour. I'm only got 2 more. I'm going to show, and the next one I have labeled wrong. But Genius Hour, if you're not familiar with, this is something we could and should very much be doing in the midst of this online learning that we've got going on. Genius Hour is the opportunity for students to follow their passions, okay? So this gives a lot of options and opportunities across this slide deck for students to explore and create and try to drive the sort of change that they'd want to see in their lives. Whatever they're passionate about, explore it, present it, teach the rest of us about it. Whether it's creating an expansive roller coaster in Minecraft or making an elaborate meal with your family, please let us know. Record the video, take the picture, share it out. What is your individual genius? This is one of the best ways I could see students interacting in the midst of our situation in the pandemic. And the last one here I'm going to show you, well, here's another genius hour. That's it again. Are some virtual field trips. And I think the next one might link. No, it's not linking you to it properly. Sorry about that. But the link is in the agenda. So here's one virtual field trip to the San Diego Zoo. Here's another one as well for younger student. Oops, you're not seeing those because I didn't drag it into this. There you go. And there you are. So again, these actually link to information on it as well as the actual camera footage, the live webcams. So yes, we're taking kids to learn about giraffes, but we're also letting them watch, and I'm not going to open up that now because the bandwidth is going to be slowing us down, but let them watch the video on each student. This particular one for a little older students lets them know that I want them to go ahead and write in their notebooks, which is here, next part, and write up their animal facts that they learned about for their creature. Great. Just watching the videos on animals, exploring, getting outside of our space in the ways that we desperately, desperately want and need to through a virtual field trip inside of a HyperDoc. So those are the magical examples I wanted to show with you, but there are a whole bunch more. For example, here are a bunch of, let me open that back up, of elementary examples for you. I linked those in their agenda. It's based on subject, so for you elementary teachers, I got a ton there for you. Oh, but I'm not an elementary teacher. Well, here you go, secondary teachers. I got ones for you too. I didn't forget you. All right, so there's a whole bunch. Honestly, there's more for secondary teachers because this does get a little bit advanced. But as I showed you, it can work even for kids as young as kindergarten age, and I've used it with young kids. They know how to click on stuff, all right? And beyond that, here's more of those multimedia text sets. So just a space to continue the learning. And one more piece. Here is a HyperDoc. Oh, that's not the HyperDoc. This, before I get to that, here are some add-ons. I've listed a few of them. EasyBib makes bibliographies easy. LucidChart does a lot of amazing visualizations. Orange Slice, nice rubrics. I really, really like Kaizena. It lets you add audio feedback instead of just those text comments. You can add audio comments and stuff for students who need it. Grackle is how you make sure your documents are accessible. And then there's other stuff to just make it pretty. Yeah, grade reports that you might need it, but word clouds that you can embed, and it'll automatically take all the words from your document and create a cloud that you can insert in or just download. Really pretty. So, yes, here is a HyperDoc on how to become a HyperDoc hero. Where do you stand now? Where do you think you might stand at the end of today? Maybe where will you stand at the end of all this? Hopefully we can move ourselves along, but I hope I at least got you into beginning to walk, all right? And at the very least, hopefully some of you who showed up were curious as well. And beyond that, yes, here's where you can continue learning. That's the Google Learning Center. You can learn more about docs and all these other things and how to dig into all those tools. We do have recordings and slides and short videos on online training available that we've linked on the agenda, that I've linked on the agenda. And beyond that, here is where I like to leave people. This is my contact info. This was that HyperDoc link. I'm sorry, not HyperDoc, the agenda link. See, my brain is there. Not enough sleep in an evening. And I hope this was worthwhile for you. Beyond that, I will definitely take time for some questions here in a moment. But other than that, everybody have an awesome and amazing day. I'm going to paste that the agenda link in the chat one more time. And if you do have an audio questions, feel free to unmute your microphone and ask, and I'm happy to respond.